Yes. So in previous lecture, I started this topic, solar geometry and solar radiation. In introduction part, the advantages and limitations of solar energy were discussed, and some initial discussion on the sun-earth geometry was done. So the some description of the sun and the sun rays and the earth, the movement of the earth around the sun. So those were the things which were being discussed, and mainly with the help of certain diagrams or figures. So figures, like in many other fields or subjects of engineering, play most important role even in this subject, right? So what most of the times is expected is that you draw a good figure. So though these figures now are available in soft form, or you can take a printout of that, but it is important that you practice drawing those figures, and try to convey as much information as possible with the help of those figures. So and that they will contain most part of your answer. Once you draw a good kind of self-explanatory figure, you don't need to write a long description of for the answer to any question, right? So I would recommend that you practice and draw good figures for the exams, in the exams. So as I just told, figures are the most important part, and as you must have noticed that most of my discussion is with the help of figures only, because you people are already aware about this thing, that like graphical presentation of any information is the best way to convey the idea. Okay, so that should be followed. Yeah. So let's start talking about, let's say, the movement of the Earth around the Sun. This part was covered. Like, this is the equation about the extraterrestrial solar radiation, right? So you were also shown this diagram that the Earth moves around the Sun, but the path, the plane on which the Earth and the other planets move around the Sun, it is called elliptical plane. This path is not perfectly circular, it is slightly elliptical. So you can see that the Earth is nearer to the Sun here on January 3, and it is away from the Sun on July 4. So because of this, the available solar radiation outside Earth's atmosphere, which is called extraterrestrial radiation, also changes, or also different on different days of the year. So July 4, you can expect the maximum solar, January 3, you can expect maximum solar irradiance. So the unit on the on a surface which you keep outside Earth's atmosphere perpendicular to the sun ray. So that will give you the maximum value, and that would be uh, 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 that will be the maximum value. It would be equal to how much? It would be given by this equation. If you put, if you are talking about January 3rd, then you put 3 here and find out the value, which will be almost 1.033, right? Times ISC. ISC is a constant derived, and that value is 1367 watt per meter square. It's an average of all the days. But on a particular day, if you want to get extraterrestrial solar radiation, then you get it with this formula. So certain some easy formulas like this may be remembered, right? You can remember this, right? And some important numbers. I think whatever formula number is to be remembered, I will explicitly tell. Otherwise, other equations you need not remember. Okay. So this is like cos of n upon 365. 365 is the number of days, and this is day number starting from January 1. And because the one revolution means 360 degrees, so 360 degrees is here, and you find cos of that. and this number you have to remember 0.033. So that's 3.3% change, plus or minus from 1, right? So if this value is equal to 0, the second term, then it's exactly equal to 1367. But on other days, it may be higher than that or lower than that, and that is nothing but the extra value of extraterrestrial solar radiation flux. We call it flux because the unit is watt per meter square. Okay. So when you say extraterrestrial solar radiation flux, how is it defined? Like you put 1 meter square area perpendicular to the sun rays, outside Earth's atmosphere, and what you get on that is called extraterrestrial solar radiation, and the average value of that is nothing but called solar constant. Though here it is shown 1350, it's not the exact value. Most accurate recent value is 1367 watt per meter square. Now, as you also know that the movement of the Earth around the sun on the ecliptical plane, that's an imaginary plane on which all planets move. The Earth, axis of the Earth is not remaining perpendicular to that plane, but it is making an angle of 23.45 degrees, right? With the perpendicular to the ecliptical plane, right? That ecliptical plane will be a horizontal line in this diagram, and this is the line which is perpendicular to that, and this is the axis of the Earth, and that axis is making an angle of 23.45 degrees with the plane in which the Earth is moving. So because of this, at some point of time, I think there should be a diagram explaining this. No, I don't have that diagram. Let me check if I have a diagram which is also showing the inclination of the Earth along with the movement. I will put that diagram. Okay. This of course also shows some of the other important days in addition to this aphelion and perihelion. Like it shows this June solstice on 21-22 June, where the northern hemisphere is tilted towards the sun. Right, northern hemisphere is tilted towards the sun. Here both the hemispheres are get equal amount of radiation. That is September equinox. This is June solstice, or you can also call it summer solstice. This is September equinox, or like here now onwards the winter will start, so it may be called winter equinox or autumnal equinox also. Then in December 21-22 you have another solstice, and that is the winter solstice, right? So at that time the northern hemisphere is tilting away from the sun, so it gets less radiation, day length is less, and the opposite is the case for the southern hemisphere. Again on March equinox, both hemispheres means half of the Earth's sphere, both of them get equal amount of radiation, because the sun ray make equal angle with both of the hemispheres, and it is called March equinox, or it is also called spring equinox or vernal equinox, right? Because now the spring will start, right? March onwards, it's a spring season. So those are the important other important days while the Earth moves around the sun. And as already told, the Earth makes an angle, the axis of the Earth makes an angle of 23.45 degrees with the vertical to the plane of ecliptic, right? Ecliptical plane. That's the plane, imaginary plane on which the Earth moves. Okay. So now we are going to define an important angle which is called declination angle. Declination angle. Now this angle, declination angle is the angle made by the line joining the sun and the center of the earth. So that's nothing but the direction of the sun ray. So line joining the sun and the center of the earth or sun ray with equatorial plane. So where is this equatorial plane? This is the earth, right? And this is the axis of the earth, and the equator is at the passing through the center, and it is perpendicular to the axis of the earth. And this is a 2D diagram, and if you think about the third dimension, it will make this equatorial plane, the depth of this page, right? So that will make the equatorial plane. So the plane which is passing through the equator, right? That's called equatorial plane. So that plane makes some angle with the sun ray, right? And that angle is called declination angle. Now this angle is not going to remain same all the time because the earth is moving around the sun, right? While this angle remains constant, the earth is revolving around the sun. So the sun ray doesn't make equal angle all the time. And the angle that is made on a given day is called declination angle. How does this declination angle vary over the year? It is negative minus 23.45 degrees on the winter solstice, that is December 22. So it's minus 23.45 degrees. It becomes 0 on the vernal equinox. It is also 0 at autumnal equinox, and on summer solstice it is plus 23.45, and again decreases, becomes 0 here, and again winter solstice, right? So it's a kind of sinusoidal like change the declination angle has with the day number. So you can get that declination angle with this formula. This is 23.45 degrees, the maximum value possible, and this is sine of, it is 284 plus n. N is the day number. If you are talking about January 1, it will be 1. And if you are talking about let's say February 1, then it is equal to 31 days of January plus 1, so that is 32. So you put day number here and find out this value in degrees, and find sine of that, multiply it with 23.45 degrees, and you will get the value of declination angle, which is graphically shown here. So here also you need to remember, I think this 23.45 degrees should be there in your mind now, registered in your mind now, and this only 284 is the number to be remembered. Right? Still, if you feel you can't remember such numbers, I may give you the formula when it is to be used. Okay, so this is about the declination angle, which is one of the important angles. We will be talking about different angles, and why are we going to talk about those angles? Because all of them are going to play a role in deciding how much radiation is available on a particular day, at a particular location, at a particular time on the earth. So all of these angles are affecting the amount of solar radiation, and that's why we need to discuss all those angles. Okay, now the extraterrestrial solar radiation, that is the radiation that is available outside Earth's surface. What is the nature of that? What is the nature of that? It is shown with the help of these graphs. Now, if you consider the sun to be, as I told earlier, that the surface temperature of the sun is important for us, not the core temperature. and the surface black body temperature is considered to be or is found to be equal to around 5800 Kelvin. Now, according to Planck's law, the Planck's law is this. So spectral emissive power means the emissive power, the emissive power unit is watt per meter square, and spectral emissive power is watts per meter square Kelvin. So that is given by this formula, right? You need not remember the formula, but you need to only know the nature of the graph that is shown here, either in this diagram or in this diagram. So if you plot that spectral emissive power versus wavelength, right? Wavelength is given in micrometers here. At different temperatures, you are going to get different graph. For example, if you put this T equal to 5800 Kelvin and vary lambda, then your spectral black body spectral emissive power will move on this line. But if you put temperature equal to 2000 Kelvin and vary lambda, you will get this graph, right? Now, because the sun surface is at around 5800 Kelvin, your spectral emissive power available, extraterrestrial radiation available, would follow this curve. What is the significance of this curve? With the help of this curve, you know at which wavelength more radiation is available from the sun and when or where it is low. Of course, this one is showing somewhat limited range of wavelength, 0.1 micrometer to 25 micrometer. And that's what it is showing. And in that, this is the visible spectrum. This is the visible spectrum. So what is the range of visible spectrum? It is from around 0.38 to 0.78. 0.38 is this left hand side, which is violet color. This is shown in nanometers. So micrometer multiplied by 1000. So when I say 0.38, it is 380 nanometer. So 380 nanometer is the blue. It is the violet color, right? And this right side 0.78, okay, 180 is the red color. What is there on the left hand side? So this this 6000 Kelvin, right, or 5800 Kelvin is the curve that you would get for the radiation from the sun. So what you see is that the left hand side of the visible spectrum doesn't cover much area. What would the area below this curve give you? The area below this curve would give you watt per meter square, right? That is spectral, that is emissive power, not spectral. The area means you integrated the area below this. It means that in the visible spectrum, you get large amount of solar radiation. Okay, I think around 48% of that is available in this portion. Somewhat small part is available on the left hand side, but still there is some big part, large part remaining. Left hand side region is called it is called ultraviolet, right? And the right hand side is infrared. So even in infrared range, there is a lot of solar radiation available. So when you say solar radiation, it's not only the visible spectrum. The light that you can or radiation that you cannot see also consists of a large part of radiation available from the sun. Okay. So that is an important thing to be considered, particularly for the conversion into solar thermal energy, right? And this lambda into T is Wien's displacement law. So it connects all the peaks at different temperatures, and that's a constant at 2898 micrometer Kelvin. What would it give you? Once you fix the temperature, it would give you the wavelength lambda at which the maximum or the peak radiation will occur at a particular temperature. So as you can see, this is the peak radiation. This is 10 raised to 8 at 5800 Kelvin. Okay, according to this, lambda T is equal to 2898. But if your temperature is lower, let's say 2000, you put it here, your lambda will be higher, right? So you get the maximum radiation somewhere at this point, right? Which is somewhere here. So between 1 and 2, it seems. Okay, so that peak shifts. Peak is lower. That is one thing. Second, it shifts on the right hand side. It means that the wavelength at which the peak will occur will be at a higher wavelength. So that is an important thing to be understood. So if you're talking about 500 Kelvin, see, your sun is here, 5800 Kelvin. So where is this peak occurring? This peak is occurring at around 0.48, which is the wavelength of green color. But why are you concerned about all these lower values? You are concerned about these lower values because your solar collector will get heated up, and that will also become an emissive body. Let's say your solar collector temperature reaches 500 Kelvin. So that will also start radiating, re-radiating, which is a loss. And you are concerned, you want to reduce the emission from that, right? So at what wavelength will the emission be highest for 500 Kelvin? It will be highest, as you can see here, right? It is this point. So this must be how much? This is 6, 7, 8, 9. So this must be 5. So at 5 micrometer, at 5 Kelvin, the 7, 8, 9, 10. So this must be 6, right? So at 6 Kelvin, sorry, 6 micrometer, at 500 Kelvin, the radiation would be highest, right? Okay. So you are going to address to this problem of the re-radiation or emission from the heated surface of the solar collector. We'll talk about that later. Okay, so right now our focus is on 5800 Kelvin. Our focus is on 5800 Kelvin, and what you see is large amount of solar radiation is available in the visible spectrum, right? So sun's black body temperature is 5800 Kelvin, and between 0.38 to 0.78, which is the visible spectrum range, around 40% of solar radiation flux is concentrated in that band, that is visible spectrum band. So that's a significant amount of solar radiation available in the visible spectrum. Highest occurs at the green color wavelength, that is 0.48 for the 500 Kelvin. Radiation flux up to 2 micrometer contains 94.1% of total energy available in the sun's radiation, and up to 4 micrometers 99.2% energy is covered, right? So you can see this 4 micrometer means 4000 nanometer. You hardly see any area below that, right? And even for this 2000, little area is remaining below. So if you are talking about solar radiation, you are concerned, when you're talking about collecting it, you are concerned about only collecting up to 4000 nanometer or 4 micrometer maximum, right? If you can collect radiation up to that, it is more than enough. Of course, no absorber will have 100% absorptivity, but still you try to make or try to coat the surface, absorber surface, with the material which has absorptivity, very high absorptivity in the wavelength up to 4 micrometer, right? Because absorptivity actually is also a function of the wavelength. It's not that all material has same absorptivity for all the wavelengths, right? It changes with wavelength. So you would like to have a material as absorber surface, which or coating, which has a very high absorptivity up to 4 micrometers. Beyond that, that's not important for you. The behavior of that material beyond this wavelength 4 micrometer is not important for you. So this is an important understanding that you get when you draw this graph, right? Now, this ideal graph at 5800 Kelvin is this smooth line drawn according to Planck's law. But Sun is not that kind of an ideal body, though its black body temperature is nearly equal to 5800 Kelvin. This curve will best fit into it, but you can see this blue color, so there is a variation, there is a like deviation beyond that also, means from that ideal curve, right? But still, for all practical purposes, you may assume that it follows Planck's law equation or curve at 5800 Kelvin. So this is about extraterrestrial solar radiation and its distribution with or along the wavelength, right? Now this is what is available outside Earth's atmosphere. Now you are not going to, most of the times, not going to collect it outside Earth's atmosphere unless it is space application. You are going to collect it on the surface of the Earth. Now what happens is that the solar radiation starts entering into Earth's atmosphere, and different phenomena or attenuation occurs inside the atmosphere. That is shown with this schematic diagram. What happens to the solar radiation? Some part of solar radiation is able to travel in a straight line and fall on the surface of the Earth directly, but some part gets reflected from the atmosphere, some part gets absorbed, and then some part gets is lost into the space, some part comes back on the Earth, and that makes diffuse radiation, which also falls on the surface of the Earth, but it comes from all the directions, right? It doesn't have a unique straight line direction like this. It comes from the whole sky, the complete hemisphere of the sky. You get the diffuse radiation from that, right? You see, like at night you see black sky, but during the day you see a sky which is glowing. Okay, so that means that you are getting radiation from the complete hemisphere of the sky, and that is nothing but the diffuse radiation. What you get directly from the sun is the direct solar radiation. So solar radiation is divided into two parts. Any irradiance in watt per meter square, what you measure, if you measure the total thing, then it has two parts. One, what has come directly, and what has come indirectly in the form of diffuse radiation. How is this diffuse radiation produced? It is because of different phenomena like scattering and absorption. Why this scattering and absorption occur? That is because of different gases present in the atmosphere. First thing is the ozone gas, which is absorbing, but it is absorbing only particularly one type of radiation, and that is the ultraviolet radiation. Then the oxygen and water vapor as well as the carbon dioxide also absorb solar radiation in different spectrums, right? They have preference for a specific spectrum. They will absorb in that, but then they will also release a part of it, and it may come back on the surface of the Earth in the form of diffuse radiation, right? So again, dust and water vapor also play a role in scattering, right? Scattering means changing its direction. So because of scattering done in different direction, like the ray may come at any angle on the surface of the earth, and that makes diffuse radiation. Okay, so this one shows like the extraterrestrial solar radiation, this red line, and the green line is one which falls on the surface of the earth. So the value gets decreased. Of course, this is showing beyond 2000. I'm not sure whether it should cross such a high number. But basically, there is a gap between these two. What is the outside Earth's atmosphere and what you get on the surface of the Earth. And there are certain dips that you see. That's because of preferential absorption by different gases, water vapor, and carbon dioxide, etc. And because of that, by the time it reaches on the surface of the earth, it has the magnitude of that has reduced, right? So this absorption we call as actually greenhouse effect. So the atmosphere itself is a greenhouse. Now greenhouse effect, if it is totally absent, like if the atmosphere is absent, it will be totally absent. But the higher amount of the heat stored in atmosphere is what is not desirable. But otherwise, some storage of heat in the earth's atmosphere makes the life on the earth possible. If there is no atmosphere, then the earth will lose more heat, and the earth's surface, as it is mentioned here, would be at minus 18 degrees Celsius, and life would not be possible. But certain greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide are present. So carbon dioxide in limited in the required quantity rather plays a positive role, but increase beyond certain ppm is what is undesirable, and that's why we like start calling carbon dioxide a villain, but that's not so. The excess amount of carbon dioxide generated by us, which is playing a negative role and increasing the greenhouse effect, is creating or is playing a negative role. So like the average temperature because of these greenhouse gases of the earth is 15 degrees Celsius. So what do? They means they absorb solar radiation, but they don't leave all of it back to space. And because of that, the earth's atmosphere remains at somewhat higher temperature, and the life on the earth is possible. Okay. So that's about the greenhouse. So greenhouse is a phenomena, right? Like it, you can easily understand the greenhouse if I give you one example. Like you have parked your car. Let's say you don't have that sun film, so you are allowing all radiation to come in. You have parked it in open sun. So you parked it for an hour or so, and when you come back, you find that it's very hot inside. It's even hotter than what is there outside, right? Why does that happen? That happens because of the greenhouse effect created by glass. So glass has allowed the radiation to come in because it's having good transmissivity in for the low wavelength radiation. That radiation comes inside the car, gets absorbed by various surfaces of the car, like your seat, your dashboard, doors inside, interior, etc. Then they get absorbed, their temperature increases, they also start re-radiating or emitting. But the glass is not a good transmitter of high wavelength. Okay. Uh, so it blocks most part of it, doesn't allow it to go out, and because of that the heat is stored in that, right? So this is what is the greenhouse effect and little effect such effect is also happening in the Earth's atmosphere, and that makes that keeps it a bit warm. But then too much of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases like this CFC, HCFC, HFC, etc. They are playing a negative role, and they are increasing the global means the atmospheric temperature higher than what is necessary for healthy growth of life, and that is creating a threat to the existence of the life on Earth. Okay. So next thing we will talk about is the Sun-Earth geometry. Sun-Earth geometry we'll understand. So we'll start talking about different angles. Of course, many of these things you might have already come across, but with the help of some this images or pictures, we will try to revisit that. What is latitude and longitude? Latitude and longitude of a place plays an important role in knowing at what time and day number how much amount, whether less or more amount of radiation would be available. The day length is also related with that, etc. So this diagram explains the concept of longitude and latitude, or rather this is particularly yeah, it shows longitude as well as latitude. So here you can see you are talking about a place P on the surface of the Earth, and this is the center of the Earth. If you join that point with the center of the Earth, you are getting a line, and this line is nothing but the line or it is the line drawn on equator. So your angle of the line joining a particular place with the center of the Earth, the angle made by it with the equatorial plane is nothing but the latitude of the place, right? So this North Pole, how much will be? It will be 90 degrees. South Pole, that will be minus 90 degree. Any place on equator will have phi, the latitude equal to 0 degree, right? So that is what is latitude. So you need to know latitude of the place to know many things about the solar radiation availability. The other concept is longitude, right? And it is shown in degrees, and it varies from 180 to 180, you can say, like 180 east and 180 west, right? So that makes it 360-degree division, and the Earth rotates about its axis, right? As it is shown on this right hand side diagram. If you see the top view of the Earth, this is showing the North Pole, and when you show 0 prime meridian, so arbitrarily the place Greenwich near London, it is a suburb of London, it is assigned 0 value prime meridian, and the angle made with that is you go exactly opposite, it is 180 degrees east, or 180 degrees west, it is one and the same point or line. And if you are in between, then you are assigned this that many degrees east or that many degrees west. So that's about the this latitude, longitude. So if you want to show it in a diagram, then it will be like this. I hope people are filling up the Google form intended for the attendance. Right, so let me just check. Yeah, 13 responses are there, right? So yeah, so this is for the attendance purpose, and you have
Sir,
to
I don't know
write.
about this. Can you please explain?
I have put in a chat box. I have given the link, so you can copy this link and fill up the form, just your roll number and name and last name, surname, right? So that it will appear in this form, right? And that will be kind of your attendance in this session, right? Though it will also be taken from here, but the format of that is not good. It just gives the email IDs. So okay, so you fill up this, copy it, and means open it, just click it, and you fill up the form, and it will appear here, right? It will appear here. So 16 responses have been there. These people have already filled up the form, right? So this will remain in the record. Okay. Yeah. So let's. So in 2-3 minutes, I'll be concluding the session. So those who have not filled up, please fill it up. Uh, and after that, I'll also like download the attendance, and we'll conclude the session. Yeah. So only this part I'm explaining now. The longitude, right? So longitude, like it's this curve on the surface of the Earth, joining the North Pole and the South Pole, moving along the globe. So as if you are creating some segment of the Earth, and this the one meridian which is passing through the Greenwich is assigned, arbitrarily assigned, 0 value, and it makes a projection. If you this curvature on equator, it will make a straight line. The projection will be a straight line, and its angle, okay, this line is joining the center of the Earth with this point on the equator, with this prime meridian, right? So angle between that line and you are at this place. So the meridian is this for your place. If you draw the projection of that on the equatorial plane, you get this line, right? So the angle between the projection of the prime meridian and meridian passing through your place, that angle is called the longitude, right? So if you are on the that angle, and if you are on the east side of prime meridian, it will be assigned east, and if you are on the west side, it will be assigned west, right? 180 degree on either side. So if you are like just opposite to this place, this prime meridian, you will be 180 degree east or 180 degree west, one and the same thing. So this is the concept of latitude, right? These are of course not new concepts, but you need to revisit it to be able to understand the further concepts. So I'm concluding this session now, and I hope everybody present here has filled up this sheet. So now there are 19 responses, and how many participants are there? So there are 20 participants, including me. So I think all 19 have filled it up, and I'm also downloading the attendance sheet from here. Okay. So now the next lecture is at on Monday, right, at 8. I'll stop recording, and I may upload all the lectures, like